you been loving Civ 7, but have been looking for the best Antiquity Age Civ to try and play with? Well, you're in the right place. Hey everyone, this is Connor from Civ Haus, and I'm here today to do a full ranking of all 11 Antiquity Age Civs that are in Civ 7. I've spent a lot of time on this, and I think I have a pretty good ranking list, at least that I'm happy with. So I wanted to share it with you all, and I've actually got a tier list to kind of go along with that I'll show at the end. For now, I'm just going to kind of pilot on screen here and kind of be able to talk through each Civ as I rank them. But if you're interested, I actually have an article on our website, the Game Haus. I'll kind of pull it over on screen here. Already written up. If you'd rather go read it that way instead of just watching this video, you can always click over there, and you can see all the spoilers this video will inevitably walk through. That's another good way of as well reminding everyone that we are a part of the Game Haus's network. So the Game Haus is a website, gamehaus.com, that covers lots of different games, actually sports and esports as well. So if you're interested in all that, be sure to check out the website as well. But no more promo. Let's get right into it. At number 11, I think we start at the bottom here. I've got Egypt at number 11. So this one on paper, I feel like looks much stronger than it really is. I mean, it looks like this would be a pretty good cultural civ, just kind of, again, taking a look at it from a bird's eye view. The Necropolis looks like it's got, you know, it's got great, getting the gold is fantastic, especially with already having some culture baked in. This unique great person right here can have a lot of different outcomes that can be good, even some related to culture. No maintenance on a unit is always good. And yeah, navigable rivers production is great. Anything with production is always going to be at least somewhat strong. But even saying all of that, it just doesn't feel like when I've played Egypt that I get a lot of great benefits. So yes, it has some strong units, especially if you're playing a defensive playstyle. I would say that's kind of the pro number one. Pro number two, the Necropolis can feel great, especially if you're getting consistent wonders up. I mean, getting that 100 gold, especially if with some early wonders, can feel really good. That can be a huge stimulus to start off a game, and snowballing is as important in Civ 7 as it always has been. And again, this unit, I'm not going to try and pronounce it. You all see what I'm talking about. It's good. It's got some great outcomes. I was looking on Civipedia and kind of checking out the different things it can do. And there are some positive ones, but a lot of times my problem with these units is they're just too random. I'm probably going to say that several times with these units that spawn with one charge and that give you a kind of random outcome. I would personally rather have a strong merchant or another fighting unit or a strong settler or an army commander or something like that. Just the RNG of this feels like it's too inconsistent to build around. The cons, I just think there are better cultural civs, just flat out. I think production on navigable rivers, I mean, that is very dependent on seed. The pyramids are okay as a wonder. And yeah, I always try and look at what age unlocks you get from each civ, and it doesn't feel like the Abbasid or the Songhai are very good in exploration, at least not ones that I would be dying to get. So with all that put together, it's just hard for me to put Egypt anywhere but last. And so unfortunately for all the Egypt fans out there, it is coming in at number 11 on our list. All right, number 10 is going to be the Khmer, or the Khmer. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce this. And this one, you know, I was debating this list with Rob. If you guys have watched Civ Haus, you know that we're kind of two parts of a whole. Rob and I, we make all of our content together, a lot of it at least. And he has played with the Khmer quite a bit and likes them. I'm not convinced. And I'm going to kind of go through why. I feel like they have a pretty strong, I mean, this cavalry unit here does feel somewhat strong in the Yutha Hati. Yep. But again, I think where this civ falls is I think they're very similar to Egypt, a bit too dependent on circumstance. So let's go through kind of the pros and cons and look at all this again. So again, this unit, I like the kind of the elephant cavalry units. I think they can be really fun, especially if you can kind of just slowly bulldoze through. But I think even with this, there's another civ that we're going to talk about that has an even better um, elephant cavalry unit. So it already feels worse at something that it's unique with. It is a great civ if you are surrounded by floodplains. So if you're able to use this beret, that can be positive. I mean, you can get, food isn't, I don't think, as strong as some other things in the game. I would actually say it's one of the worst things, which also puts the civ lower. But a little bit of food early can still be good. I mean, you still need to get your cities and towns going. This can be good, but again, it's dependent on floodplains. Districts on rivers do not remove natural yield of the tile. So again, dependent on having not only just a city on rivers, but districts on rivers. Just so many things that feel restrictive here, right? I don't feel like, in the same way, the civ unlocks are very good. I'm not exactly jazzed to play any of these. I don't feel like this merchant, the Vaisha, is very good. Just being immune to flood damage, ignoring movement penalties from wet terrain, it just doesn't feel like, compared to some other civs, this is really doing much. So, it feels like to me the Khmer could easily have been last. I actually had them last originally, and Rob convinced me to move them up. But yeah, just not one that I'm ever really excited to play. And from an expansionist scientific kind of trope point of view, there are far, far better options, in my opinion, than this civ. Alright, excuse the jump cut on this video, but after recording the entire list, I realized I left out number 9, had all my numbers mixed up, so coming in at number 9 on our top Antiquity Age civilizations lists is the Maurya, and I want to talk about the Maurya and kind of why I have them lower on this list. So I actually think that Maurya has one of the strongest natural abilities in the game as far as its ceiling goes. So the ability to choose an additional pantheon after unlocking mysticism, especially if you are able to unlock mysticism early, I actually feel like this civ can be really strong. And you can use that pantheon and all that it can kind of give you to make your altars very strong and to give you a lot from having those, right? In the Antiquity Age, it's not a playstyle I typically gravitate towards, but I can see how that could be very strong. The other big thing that I think this civ has going for it is, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the unique cavalry unit, but it is this elephant unit right here. I think this is, of the 2 elephant units in Antiquity, I think this one's far better. +5 combat strength against fortified districts is pretty great, especially in the latter part of Antiquity, when you're, typically ramping up your military and starting to attack cities. There's going to be more districts, more fortified districts in particular, and you can just be a true, absolute bulldozer with this unit as you're kind of pushing through in the later part of Antiquity, like I was saying. The other unit, however, I'm not as big of a fan of. I like having a unique settler. I usually like having some diversity here as far as, this is a bit more expansionist leaning. But I just don't think that getting the +2 happiness on the city halls is really all that important. And that's really all that it does. So I just don't see how this is really even hardly worth noting. I mean, outside of just this, I guess. But, yeah, it doesn't feel great. I guess what you're going for, though, kind of looking at the unique quarter, plus 10% happiness, flat 3 happiness on each one, so you're going to have 6, and then you get some adjacency bonuses. The one thing I will give, kind of the flowers that I will give this civ, is that you have a lot of opportunities to play very balanced. You're going to get culture, you're going to get science, you're going to be happy, you're going to be entering celebrations. That's going to help you to scale in different ways, that kind of however you choose. You have the Pantheon, you have a strong unit. There's a lot to like here. But this civ, honestly, we're going to talk about in this video a little bit, a scale of adaptability versus kind of being pigeonholed into a playstyle. I think this civ is very adaptable, which I think is a pro for it. But, I mean, to really get exceptional value, I think you're going to have to use this Pantheon and get it early. So that also pigeonholes you a bit, and it just feels a bit like a jack of all trades, master of none. So yeah, the biggest pros I can say are the natural ability, very strong. Cavalry unit, pretty strong. But the cons, I mean, I'm not convinced this is a good unique quarter, especially in the face of some of the other ones that are going to come later on this list. This feels like a borderline worthless unit. Again, the playstyle you really need to get to mysticism early, so if you were to be stunted on culture early and not be able to get there, that's going to cripple you because you're not going to have any good pantheons to choose from. And down here at unlocks, I'm not a huge fan of Majapit or Chola in exploration. Maybe Chola. So there's just not a lot that you get from this Civ, so that's why we have it down at number 9 on our list. Moving on now to number 8 is going to be the Han. So I think the Han are one of the more fun Civs to play, actually. And I feel bad putting them at number 8. Especially, they're a fan favorite. There's a lot you can do with the Great Wall. But it's still so outshined by other Civs, I think. Now let's kind of break this down as we do. So with the age unlocks, we'll start down here. I actually think these are one of its strongest pros. Getting Ming, Mongolia, and the King can allow you to do a lot of different things. We have to think of, if you're not kind of reaching, some Civs you can unlock by certain thresholds. If you're not getting any of those, it's always nice to have some reliably unlocked. And these can allow you to play a lot of different playstyles. I mean, going Ming or Mongolia is a big choice in the Exploration Age, kind of based on how your Antiquity Age went. That flexibility is an aspect of this, right? Now we'll talk about the Great Wall. I have seen some hilarious, Great Wall, massive circles on the Civ Reddit and some other places. Even then, it feels more like a meme than it does an actual viable strategy. Yeah, you get +2 culture and, 1 happiness for each adjacent Great Wall, but it still takes up a tile, and it's just combat strength when defending. So you're dependent already on having to defend from an aggressive AI, and that dictates a lot of playstyle right there. And so it just doesn't feel like this is exactly a great unique improvement, especially when you have unique quarters and some other really strong things that other Civs have. It just doesn't feel great. I feel like the ability here, the capital and new towns gain additional population with their first growth event, the 9 provinces. I feel like that's actually pretty strong. I also feel like this unique ranged unit is pretty strong. +5 combat strength when attacking adjacent units is pretty good. Again, it's not the best unit in the game, but I think this is all really serviceable. But going with the cons, the Great Wall, like I said, can feel very clunky. I've had several games with it where I just had a really hard time trying to build consistent tiles and actually get a wall. I just had chunks of wall kind of everywhere, and I just looked bad. I feel like this. I said it with Egypt, I believe, that I'm gonna say this a lot with these units, but this just feels too random with the Shi Defu. And yeah, the overall Han just feels too defensive overall. I mean, I know that's kind of, the play styles. You're bunkering in, you're expanding, only really expanding where your walls can move to. But in general, I wish I was more excited about Han than I am. So it is going to come in, like I said, at number 8 on this list. Moving on now to number 7 is going to be Carthage. So I've played as Carthage, and I had a run with Augustus where I actually had a really strong Antiquity Age. But even at the end of the age, it just didn't feel amazing going into exploration because of how hamstrung I was on culture and science. Now, from an economic perspective, and the military I was able to utilize during that was unbelievable. I had so many resources in my capital, and this Numidian cavalry was very strong. And now that is something that is not to be undersold about Carthage, is how it really can ramp into something incredible. But I do think it has some pretty fatal flaws. So let's talk about the good first. honestly, it's just one of the most fun playstyles in Antiquity. The One City Challenge, even trying to progress some of that into exploration, is just a fun, you know, kind of classic Civ challenge for long-time players. They should enjoy. So that's fun. The Punic Port here is very good. I think it's one of the better unique quarters in Antiquity, actually, because of the unique resources you get. You get production here. You get production adjacency for coast, rivers, wonders. Anything production is very good. I know Potato McWhiskey just talked about that on his channel a little bit, and I agree with him. Production just feels really, really strong. And the dockyard's even not too bad, you know? So this, in general, Punic Port feels very good. It's cool that you unlock Spain. I think Spain is a good Exploration Age Civ, so that's a plus. And again, the Numidian cavalry can feel really, really good. And even these colonists are, you know, getting 2 of them each time you go to settle is strong. If you're not settling for military, that can feel very good. So you might say, Connor, well, what's wrong with Carthage then? What's bad about it? Well, I've played a few other games with Carthage, and it's gone horribly. You know, I mentioned that one with Augustus. I did absolutely roll through. I felt unbelievably strong. I felt invincible. But I've played some where I've gotten horrible seeds. You know, some far north seeds where I wasn't really close to the coast. I was in the tundra. Some different things like that. It feels really restrictive in how you have to play it. I mean, that's kind of natural to, you know, it kind of comes along with it here. You know, you can only have one city. That's a restriction. But that is a nerf. I mean, people forget to read this as being a nerf to this Civ. I mean, it is. And yeah, it does feel very easy to have just a tough time with culture and science. Maybe I'm just a bad gamer. Maybe I just don't know what I'm doing at the end of the day. But it feels like there's a lot of struggle with culture and science with Carthage. Now, at the end of the day, it still feels very strong. I don't want to undersell that. And I would say even at this point in this list, we're at number 7, we've kind of turned a corner. I think these next 2 are probably in roughly the same tier. I'd have to kind of look at my final tier list again, but I feel like, yeah, this and number 6 are in one tier, maybe right in the middle. You can guess what tier that is. And then we will turn a corner at number 5. And just as a reminder, if you're enjoying this, definitely throw us a like and a subscribe. We always appreciate it. We're growing. Over 500 subs now, so doing good. Just always appreciate the support. Small channel, all that good stuff. Go us. Let's move on to number 6, though. And that is going to be Persia. Okay, similarly, this is I have this and Carthage next to each other because I feel like I've had a very similar experience with each, where I've played through a couple different times with Persia. I think I've played Persia twice through Antiquity. Once, it went unbelievably well. I mean, I was just unstoppable, a true military force. I think I used Friedrich Baruch down here, and it was just a ton of fun. Even though I don't feel like he's all that good, still really fun. But I've also had a game that didn't go nearly as well. And it all depends on how you get started with Persia. But I'll say this, if you want just a pure military civilization, Persia will probably be higher on your list than number 6. But, like I said, it's very restrictive as far as the playstyle goes. Really depends on snowballing. Let's kind of look at the specifics of the pros and cons here. So, these 2 units, the Immortal and the Hazarapatis, are incredible together. I personally transitioned this into Mongolia in the one run that I had going really well. So I was able to go ahead and work on the commander upgrade that gives cavalry bonuses and just kind of parlay that right into exploration. It felt very, very good. You can just roll over people with these. I mean, with the +3 combat strength attacking, with a military leader, you're going to be just crushing units, healing every single time, and you have a commander inherently that's going to be stronger. So your military strength is really good. Especially if you can get Gate of All Nations going, it is very, very strong. So overall, taking a look at all this, I don't think there's a better Civ in Antiquity for offense than Persia. So if you're looking to just play like a battle simulator here, play Persia, no doubt. But there are some pretty glaring cons as well. I think this unique improvement is awful. I built it, and then I wondered why. It just feels bad. It can be devastating if you lose some units early and you don't have a way to scale quickly. It can feel pretty bad. And overall, this Civ does not do much outside of fight good. If you end up needing to pivot to science or culture down the line, you're just gonna have a hard time. Now, the idea obviously with military civs is that you're dominating at such a high level, they're able to kind of acquire other settlements and cities that will help you to do that better. And I was able to do that. I think on my last playthrough on, it was either Immortal or Deity, I was able to take 2 capitals before the end of Antiquity and knock 2 players out, and I was going into exploration. I think I had used a settler 1 time, and everything else was seized, and I think I had 11 or 12 settlements. So it can feel really good when it's going good, and you can just be buying units constantly. I think I had 4 army commanders at the end. It can really, in the standard speed, it can feel really good, but again, Persia, if it had just another angle where it could survive and thrive, I think it would be better, but if it doesn't go your way in the beginning, it's not going to go your way at all, and so because of that, it is number 6. And now we're turning a corner on the tier list. We're moving into number 5 with the Mississippian, and I feel like this is really where we start to... We're looking at what I would consider to be really solid to borderline elite civs from the rest of this tier list. Spoiler alert, we're in... I would call this B tier as of right now. I would have Mississippian in B tier. And this is because I think we start to get a lot of balance from here on out, and we start to lose some of the kind of more glaring weaknesses that we were seeing in some of the earlier civs. So let's look at the Mississippian and kind of talk about why I like them. First off, we have to start with the Burning Arrow. I think this could be, maybe, the strongest military unit in Antiquity. It's close to one other one that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, but it is very good. So many units have died from the burning on the tiles. I mean, it can just feel so strong. You can use it offensively and defensively. You know, that adaptability piece is key, and it does feel very strong. And I like having the balance between a merchant and a military unit here, so you don't get anything random. It's not unit commander where you're all military. This gives you a pretty clear secondary path to move forward with, right? And I think kind of on that note, this unique merchant, I think I said trader, this merchant rather, is really solid. Just the 25 gold per resource acquired when creating a trade route is really strong, and that can be something that can help keep you balanced early, which I think is just about as important as scaling early. So now let's look at the cons, because I do think there are some cons of the Mississippi, and I think this is still one of those civs. I could have maybe put them in C tier still, but it does feel like there are some cons here with this civ. Goose Societies does not feel good. All buildings receive a +1 food adjacency for resources. You know, I don't know. I just don't know if this is very good. Again, I have a problem with food right now in the game. If food is made stronger, maybe. The Mississippian have a pretty bad starting bias. You're just not going to get much from where you start. No rough terrain, nothing like that. And the Pot Cop is the other one where I just don't love it. It just feels like there's so many better unique tile improvements out there than this, especially in the list that we're going to look at in the next 4 that are coming up. The saving grace, I will say, is I do like that you get the Shawnee. I like playing with the Shawnee personally. I like Hawaii as well. Inca, I think, is terrible, but at least you get these 2 options from the Exploration Age going that can kind of move you into the Modern Age. And Monk's Mound, I feel, is so-so. So that's kind of a null and void factor here for me. Overall, I think the Mississippian is balanced enough to where it is pretty fun to play with still and can still feel really, really good. Almost regardless of what playstyle you're going for. So let's move on to number 4 now. This is going to be Oxum. So, I talked about balance being good. Let's throw that out the window for just a second, because if you're good enough at one thing, there is a thing called min-maxing. Min-maxing with gold with Oxum feels really, really good. I have played the sim with Xerxes the Achaemenid, and it's by far the most dominant Antiquity Age playthrough I have ever had. I had a good seed, and some other things fell into place, but it felt unstoppable. So let's kind of talk about why, and maybe some of the cons as well. So first off, flat 2 gold on resources, very good. If you can get some resources early, or just have a wide empire, you're going to be bringing in a ton of gold really fast from turn 1. Keep that in mind. Some things take time to scale. This is on as soon as you hit settle, right? The unique units, the Dao and the Tonghua, are a bit dependent. You need coast, you need, places for your ships to go. But if you can get at least a decent seed to be able to use the Dao, like I have had on my kind of mega playthrough I was talking about, I wasn't even on the coast. I was just able to get over to the coast pretty early, and then started to utilize this, and then I was just trading, but also fighting. And +4 combat strength on the coast is wild. And then obviously, a non-pillageable +10 trade route range is just so nice quality of life-wise. You're able to just trade a ton, get even more gold, more resources, yada, 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 right? And then the Hawilt, I think it's actually one of the better tile improvements. I would always rather have a quarter that I can, really kind of focus things around. But this is pretty fun to be able to stack these. I had several of these whenever I was playing on different towns, different settlements, and cities. And this helps you to get some of the culture going when you are otherwise just going full gold. I also think the Great Steely is a pretty good wonder to be able to get early. I always try and look at these a little bit because that is part of the kind of civic tree, the advantage here. And this is a pretty good one to get. Now, you only get Songhai, which is not my favorite. I felt like that was a pretty big weakness, actually, of Oxum. I think it's actually probably my biggest knock, is that you just don't get a lot of options moving forward. The second biggest con, obviously, you need the coast. And yeah, there's a somewhat restrictive playstyle to this because of the way you have to go about scaling. You have to get resources, you have to trade, etc. But all in all, if you can get it going, it has a higher ceiling. Oxum has a higher ceiling than I think almost any Civ in the game. Now, there are some we're going to look at, particularly the top 2, I think really compete with Oxum as far as the ceiling goes. I just think the floor is a bit lower with Oxum. Like, Rob has played them and has had a bit more negative of an experience than me. But because of the high ceiling, because of what you can do with Oxum, I couldn't put it any lower than number 4. And I actually considered putting it higher. But Greece has to be number 3. I think that leaves 2 obvious choices that people know what are coming, but let's talk about Greece first. So, I think Greece is the strongest cultural civ in Antiquity. And I think that if you're trying to go for culture and you like interacting with city-states, this is a super fun playstyle. And now I will say with this, with Greece, Greece was the civ I was most excited to play. When I read everything, when I looked at everything, outside of another civ that we're going to talk about in a second, Greece, I was jazzed to play Greece. I actually haven't had a super dominant Antiquity Age run with Greece yet, and I've been playing quite a bit. With almost every other civ, I feel like I've at least been able to make something work. But I have tried with Greece, and it's not like I'm like getting crushed or anything, but I just have not found a super, super dominant way forward with the Greeks. I'll kind of look at why, and why I still have them number 3 on my list, even with some poor results. Start with the unlocks. Norman, Spain, Russia, solid. I would probably look for Spain, Russia here. Norman is just okay, but still, great unlocks, gives you some good choices right away. The Acropolis is incredible. Especially, you have this, obviously, this +3 influence you're getting early from the very beginning of the game, and 3 may not sound like a lot, but it is an Antiquity. You get gold in your Parthenon for each city-state you're suzerain of. You get happiness, culture adjacency for quarters, culture, influence on rough terrain, culture agency for wonders. There is a lot to like here. I mean, there is just so much you can get going with this, with Greece. So this is, I think, one of the most shining elements of it, along with the +3 influence on the palace. I think is just chef's kiss. You are getting a lot of things going in your favor right away. And I think the cons, honestly, are not that big of a deal to me. I haven't found them to be horrible. Now, we'll start with the hoplite. I have not been impressed with the hoplite. Maybe because it's just +2 combat strength, and I feel like that number starts to feel small down the line. I just have never really found a ton of success with these units. Maybe I just need to, read the Art of War and, learn a bit more about battle tactics. But hasn't felt great to me. Again, you knew I was going to say it. The Logios here, a little too random. I just wish this was something else versus like the Great Persian with the charges. I have used this before and gotten ones that I couldn't activate, and it just felt like it was wasted production. Now, that can happen, but yeah, again, it just doesn't feel the best for me to have this. And then I would say, as far as the restrictive versus adaptable playstyle, like kind of that spectrum, I think Greece is a little bit restrictive, but not near as many as some of the ones lower on the list. I mean, you have to work with city-states. If they all get wiped out, you do lose some inherent advantages right away. If you spawn next to purely hostile ones, it's going to make your life miserable. So there are some things that can go really wrong with Greece that I think I have personally experienced, but I'm trying not to let my bias influence this too much. I have seen other people talk very highly of Greece. I read quite a few tier lists before making my own, just wanted to see the community sentiments. And I see the value here, I see it on paper. And this is different than Egypt, where Egypt, I think it's on paper to a degree, but I have just not seen anyone have success with it, myself included. Whereas Greece, even though maybe I haven't had the best time, just had a decent time with them. Other people have had such great runs with Greece and Antiquity, so trusting the community, trusting my instincts, putting Greece at number 3. And that leaves 2 choices for the top 2 Antiquity Age Civs in Civ 7. I'd be curious who everyone thinks is coming up next, because there might be some contentiousness about this. I'm not actually sure at a deep level how the community feels, but I am going to put Rome at number 2, leaving one option left for number 1 that we'll talk about in a second, but let's give Rome their flowers right away. I think Rome, outside of being, the most idyllic Antiquity Age civilization, arguably, I think it is without a doubt the most adaptable on this list. That's that kind of spectrum we were just talking about. I think you can play just about any way you want to with Rome. Feels very strong, feels borderline broken, and there's a lot that I can talk about for why. Now, we talked about the Burning Arrow being a strong unit. I think the Legatus is the strongest single unit in Antiquity that you can play with. Army Commander, 1 charge to create a new settlement for every 3 levels it has. You're going to want to get this early, and you're going to want to move with your legions and go crush things, and then found settlements with this. What an unbelievable unit to be able to do all this. I am surprised it can do this much, to be honest. Now, I mean, 3 levels is hard to get multiples of, but I mean, if you're conquesting enough, it can be done. Or if you have to defend enough, it can be done. Moving down the Forum, incredibly well balanced. You get plus culture and gold for every unique tradition in the government, which synergizes with the Legion. You get gold, you get influence, you get happiness, you get culture. You get so many things with Rome that can allow you to play damn near any play style that you want. And it feels great. And the only thing missing here is science, which we're going to talk about. I think it is the best Civ as well for unlocks. So you've got tons of options down here. Great Britain is an excellent Civ. Spain is excellent. America's excellent. The French Empire is very strong. I have not played as Prussia yet, but I think they seem at least pretty strong. So yeah, it's funny to me that the game has 6 unlocks for Rome and 1 for Oxum. That doesn't make any sense to me. Well, Rome is also very good. They just want you to play Rome, it seems like, and yeah, we're gonna, because Rome seems very good. And yeah, it has really just amazing all-around Civ, honestly. Let's talk about the bad, though. Let's try and find the bad. The first thing I'd point to is the Colosseum. It's just not the best wonder to me. Obviously, it is idyllic for Rome, and you gotta build the Colosseum if you're playing Rome, right? But, not great. Also, no science on the board. You know, this is not the Civ to play science with, but it is not exactly an option. And the Legion is the last thing I'll talk about, and it is strong. I've had a lot of success playing with the Legion, but it does have to scale. It does take time. I feel like getting the traditions in the government, requires it to move. Anything that turns on at the beginning of the game is very good. Like we talked about the Greek influence on the palace, that is very strong because it starts immediately. Things like this that have to scale, it just creates a layer of dependency that it just has to be a con, at least in a minor sense, right? I still think this unit is cracked, though, don't get me wrong. Yeah, we didn't talk about the 12 tables here, +1 culture on districts in the capital and city centers and towns. That feels really good, especially as Rome, the capital, turns into a bigger city. That's going to turn into a pretty good amount of culture. So, crazy good culture scaling, a lot of adaptability, strong military, great unlocks. There's a lot to love about playing Rome in Civ 7. However, there is another Civ that I don't know if I would say it blows it out of the water, but I personally think is much, much stronger. My personal favorite Civ, and I think the community's favorite Civ, is Maya. The Mayans, they'll always have a special place in my heart because when this game came out, I started a Let's Play. It's still going on the channel. And I didn't know what I was doing. I never played the game, obviously. Truly no idea. And I played as Mayans, and I used Harriet Tubman. And I just did it because I just looking at this initially, without knowing anything about the game, it just felt incredible. And I just had some intuition, apparently, because it is. It is truly so, so strong. Let's talk about why. Okay. But before before I do, I think this is not only the best overall Antiquity Age Civ, I actually will say this is the best civilization in the game, period. I also think it's the best science Civ in Antiquity, probably the best science Civ in the game, but could be some better ones maybe. Let's look at why. Let's just work down from the top, why not? The palace gains half a science for adjacent vegetated terrain. So, with a certain start, you could have 2.5 science per turn right away. 2 science at least, right? I mean, you're probably at least going to get 1 or 2 from this. That's crazy, again, as soon as you start the game. Mundo Perdido, maybe one of the things I would say isn't necessarily a blemish, but I didn't feel like I had to build this, right? It's good, but we'll move on. Let's look at this. Okay, the ranged unit is incredible. Not as good as Burning Arrow, but probably the second best ranged unit in Antiquity. Just, again, very strong overall. And you're going to be hiking through your vegetated tiles, running away from anyone that tries to chase you down. It's great. I personally, though, I cannot say enough about how much I like the Jaguar Slayer unit. When I played as this unit, probably some of my early playthroughs in the Let's Play are hilarious because I didn't know that you could trap every 3 turns. Once I realized you could, I guess 5 turns now. Maybe that's been nerfed, I'm not sure. Either way, I don't think it really matters. Being able to throw traps around your enemy's borders, your own territory, I mean, you could put these anywhere. And they're invisible to enemies. 25 damage and end movement. This is crazy. And this is a scout that can fight. So, I don't know. I'm speechless with this unit because I think it is so, so strong. I don't know if it's the strongest unit in Antiquity, but I personally love it. I bought so many of these when I was playing in my Let's Play, and every time I play Maya, I just buy Jaguar Slayers and run them around and trap. and then run away from the traps, put in my ranged units, shoot everyone down. It's amazing. Let's move on, though, to some of the buildings in this unique quarter here. This is the, however you pronounce that, Uy-Bil-Ku. That's definitely wrong, but this is a combination of these two, obviously. Every time you research a technology, the settlement gains production equal to 15% of its cost. Now, production right now is very strong. I think that is something that a lot of people in the community are picking up on, and you get the strongest resource from the thing that you are generating the most of, which is science. That seems pretty good. Now these, +3 happiness, +1 culture for adjacency for quarters, wonders, not great, but it does give you some balance. You have happiness and culture coming from this, which is one of the only civs to give you culture and science, at least in some degree. But this building here, +4 science flat, very good. +2 science if placed on vegetation, almost always happening. And +1 science adjacency for wonders. This is just a piece of the unique quarter. I mean, this just feels so strong, especially if you can hit a good tile for it. You're going to be generating so much science. I think in standard speed, you know, I credit the Mayan start. I think I started off with like 500 science in modern age. And, you know, I think I will, hopefully, fingers crossed, just run away with that in science. But I think it's because of this Mayan start, honestly. And the age unlocks feel pretty good. Hawaii and Mexico feel pretty good. The Incan is meh. That's a slight ding here, but you still get 2 civs that I like to play in those ages. I think Hawaii is fun to play, and Mexico is, I think, pretty good. I actually went in my Let's Play Inca to America because I was playing as Harriet Tubman, and I kind of took the leader into consideration with what civ I was unlocking. So that's something to keep in mind, too. I mean, a lot of this is going to depend on what leader you play. But again, to go through the pros and cons. Best scout unit in the Antiquity Age, maybe best scout unit in the game. Unbelievably balanced quarter and amazing for science. Best starting environment you can get, I think. Great civ unlocks, and no better science scaling in the entire game than with Maya. Only con I will give this, because I think there is one, is you have to play a certain kind of defensive style to get all the value out of the traps that you want to, and to get the value out of the vegetated tiles. It's like they can end up being this kind of passively nice thing, but to really get value out of them, you have to play a bit defensively, you have to lure people in. This is why I liked playing as Harriet Tubman and just kind of antagonizing people, getting them to declare wars on me, rinse and repeat, etc., etc. Felt very strong. And that rounds out the top 10, or top 11, I guess, ranking all of them. It's not a top list, just ranking all of them. Ranking all of the Antiquity Age civs. I will put the tier list on screen now, and this kind of shows what I was thinking as far as the tiers go. So you've obviously got Maya and Rome, I think definitely alone in S tier. Greece, Oxum, and the Mississippians are in A tier. I think you can maybe bump the Mississippians down, but I think the Greeks and Oxum are pretty solidly A, especially Greece. Greece, you could make an argument for S tier to me. It just feels like Rome and Maya are in a tier of their own. I have Persian, Carthage, and B tier, and then I've got the Han, the Khmer, and the Maurya. I always say that wrong. It kills me. Those 3 in C tier, and Egypt alone in D tier. But again, the tiers for me are really just a way to show where I thought the biggest gaps were. It's not like I was looking for a certain criteria to be S tier or A tier or C tier. The emphasis of this video was to try and rank all of the Antiquity Age civs. Then I decided that, just because I think of everything in terms of tier lists in my life, just a mental process for me, I just decided to throw them into a tier list for just kind of myself and to see how it felt seeing them in a list. So overall, though, it feels like to me there are a lot of strong civs in Antiquity. I think there are some other ages where there are far weaker civs, where, I think the D and the C tier would be a bit more distinct. I feel like Antiquity, you can't go horribly wrong. I have had good playthroughs with Egypt. I've had good playthroughs with, especially Rob has had great playthroughs with the Khmer. So there's definitely value in these civs. I think it's probably the strongest age in the game as far as civilizations go. It also just feels like the most robust and well-rounded age in the game, where it feels like some in exploration and in modern just feel terrible. And I'm going to talk about those in future weeks. I'm going to continue these ranking lists. So I would love any feedback, because we are planning to do more. I have not recorded exploration or modern age yet. I kind of wanted to wait until the new DLC dropped to be able to talk about those civs. So, but as always, would love feedback about this list. I'm sure there are going to be some opinions about where I've ranked your favorite civ. Don't hurt me. But again, I'd love to hear feedback on this. Was I just totally oblivious, totally wrong? What points did you like? How would you like the video formatted differently? All things that, as someone making a growing channel, I would love to hear. But in general, I always appreciate the comments. We get a lot of great ones in the channels, even the critical ones. We read them all. So again, always want to show, give our flowers to the community and say thank you to you all for tuning in. But that's going to do it for today. So again, from our house to yours, we hope you'll join us for one more turn. Thanks so much for watching.